What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Nemo Propaganda here, and today we're going to talk about the Zoo Method bookshelf speaker. You guys know I reviewed their DWX maybe roughly a year ago now, and I absolutely loved the Zoo DWX. I wanted to buy it. I wanted a pair for myself, but it was just physically way too large for my little room. I don't have the space to accommodate a set of speakers that big. So when I saw Zoo had a smaller pair coming, I emailed them right away. I was like, guys, I need a review sample. They sent me this beautiful orange pair. I've had them here for about 60 days, and today we're going to talk about it now. First, let's get one thing out of the way in the title. I'm saying these are a giant killer. Is it true? Oh yeah, it's true in many ways. Yeah, just stay with me. We're going to talk about it. When I go through the sound description, I will point out the areas that I feel the speaker absolutely and without a doubt punches above its weight. Let's get those main specs on screen so you guys can check that out. I'll tell you about the standout features that are unique, in my opinion, what the speaker sounds like going through the treble, mid-range, and bass. We'll compare it to some other speakers like Zoo's own DWX, as well as some other smaller speakers in and around this price category. We'll talk about amplifier pairing, room setup, and then we'll wrap up the video. So, standout features. This is Zoo's smallest speaker. This is, for those that, look, I'll put some pictures on screen, but this is closer in size to something like an ELAC DBR62 or Dynaudio EMIT 20, ATC SCM 11, things like that. Whereas, the previous Zoo speaker I reviewed, I remembered in the DWX review, some people commented and were like, that's not really a bookshelf speaker. And, I get your point, guys. I definitely get your point. But the Zoo Method, very regular size, right? Does have an 8-inch driver. That's a custom unit designed by Zoo. It is coaxial, so this is going to be pretty much a point source speaker. That means you're going to want to tow it in mostly, at the shoulders is what I would recommend, or close to, depending on what you like, right? That's going to give you the best, imaging, sound stage, and things like that. I generally point my speakers nearly straight out into the room unless I'm using a coaxial, then I really start to tow them in. Let's talk about those paint finishes. That's a standout feature. Zoo offers a plethora of paint finishes that look fantastic. Listen, the pictures, this video does not do this paint justice. It is finished so nicely. It looks incredible. Those of you that have a lot of natural light coming into your room, these paint finishes by Zoo are going to look fantastic. I'll try to post some pictures so you can see what I mean, but you got to see it for yourself. We do have a beautiful bass port. It looks almost identical to the one that was in the DWX, which I appreciate because I think it looks super cool. Last standout feature, and I believe this is a first for Zoo. I believe this 8-inch is a first for Zoo also, but I think this might be one of the first Zoo speakers that ships with a grill. The grill is finished in really nice, beautiful, soft black fabric. Like when you touch it, it feels so nice. I know that's probably a weird thing to say, but it's not that regular grill fabric. It's really soft when you touch it. I'll throw a picture on screen so you guys can see what the speaker looks like with the grill. So around back, it's real simple. You just got a pair of binding posts and not much else, guys. So what the heck does it sound like? What does it sound like, right? So starting with the high frequency region, mostly neutral. There's not any like extra treble. It's not on the forward side. It's not dark and rolled off. Treble is neutral. Detail is pretty normal. It's not digging deep into the recording, nor is it like, again, it's not rolled off and relaxed either. It is neutral. The attack is not sharp, nor is it soft and smooth. It is neutral, guys. Good air, good space, good separation, good imaging. Let's talk about the mid-range because that is where the speaker starts to become a giant killer in ways I was not prepared for. And something interesting to know, when these showed up and I unboxed them and I put them on the stand, I was coming off reviewing 3 different speakers in the $4,000 price category. The Bucard E50, the Radiant Acoustic Clarity 6.2, and not quite 4,000, but I think 3,600, the ATC SCM 19. Those are the 3 speakers I had been listening to tremendously when this $1,200 a pair speaker showed up. So the fact that it impressed me this much and I consider it a giant killer is really something. That's really something. So mid-range. We got a mid-range region that tonally is going to be a little bit warm. Quite a little bit warmer, especially compared to like the Zoo's own DWX. a little bit tonally rich, very natural sounding, especially in the vocal region, and a sound that is very unrestrained. This unrestrained quality and characteristic is something you generally find when you're spending like, you know, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8, $10,000, right? You generally have to spend quite a bit of money to get that unrestrained mid-range. There are quite a few speakers that have like unrestrained, you know, like treble, you know, and things like that. But to get the mid-range like that, it's just not something you see, certainly not at this price category, even at $2,000. Guys, I could sit here and compare the Zoom Method to like a KEF R3 Meta, Bucard S400 Mark II, you know, Fine Audio F500 FP, and like a bunch of other speakers. In terms of how unrestrained and effortless the mid-range is, even those $2,500 speakers cannot match the Zoom Method. Don't get me wrong, those $2,500 speakers, they might bring us more detail or detail retrieval. They might bring us more bass power to the table. I'm not saying those are terrible speakers by any means. I love a lot of them. But in terms of the unrestrained and effortless nature of that mid-range, that is generally found on much more expensive speakers. And for that reason, I will absolutely say for that quality, it is absolutely a giant killer. Also, sense of scale. The stage is massive. The sense of scale and soundstage, again, not only is it bigger than everything in the price category, its stage is larger than any of the $2,500 speakers, again, like KEF R3 Meta, Bucard S400, Totem Bison, Fine F500 FP, Dynaudio Evoke 20, even ATC SCM11, any of those speakers, which I love, all those speakers. I own quite a few of them even. But the Zoom Method simply stages larger, more effortless, more unrestrained, absolutely incredible, very natural sounding, again, especially in that vocal region, fantastic imaging. Moving down to, oh, by the way, as in terms of fullness, the mid-range is not a mid-range that is very like thick and full. It is more lighter, quicker, agile, right? Moving down to the bass region, the bass of the speaker is on the lighter side. That agility continues down into the bass. This is bass that is more about being agile, quick, tactile, having good note-to-note distinction, having good articulation and bass fidelity. Those of you that are like, hey, Nemo, I need a speaker I can get really close to my main wall. I can't pull a speaker 2-3 feet out from the main wall. The Zoom Method is going to be a great option for that because it's a little bit lighter on bass compared to something like, let's say, a Dynaudio Emit 20, a Bucard S400 Mark II, KEF R3 Meta, right? Or, you know, even a CSS Crichton, any of those like bass power speakers, right? Like you can't put those all the way against the wall. You just can't. The Zoom Method, you absolutely can, and it'll sound fantastic, and it'll even reinforce some of its bass and make it sound a little bit fuller. But I did test it. I pushed them all the way against the main wall. It never once overpowered the room, not even a little bit. It just gave the bass a little bit more heft to it, but it still was very unrestrained, very effortless, quick, agile, tactile, so on and so forth. Good note-to-note distinction and articulation. So that's what the speaker sounds like. The mid-range is absolutely and without a doubt the star of the show. It's got a mid-range that has some qualities that you generally don't hear at this price, or double, or triple sometimes, honestly. I'm being serious here. I'm not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole. I'm not just trying to gas these up. That's the truth. Okay. So let's talk about amplifier pairing. I found a really inexpensive amplifier pairing option, the RSL IA255.1. It's $110. Everything amazing I just told you about the speaker is available when using that $110 RSL IA255.1. The only thing, it's going to stage a little bit smaller when you use that little inexpensive amp, but it's still going to sound really fantastic. Of course, those with more money, you know, nicer amplifiers, it's going to sound even better. I used my Kinky Studio preamp and monoblocks. I also used the LAiV preamp, DAC, and monoblocks that I have in for review. Whether I was using the inexpensive RSL $110 amp or the $8,000 plus LAiV preamp, monoblock, and DAC, the speaker sounded fantastic, and I never had to skip any of my favorite recordings, even like my, you know, lower quality recordings. We've all got some, you know, some of our favorite recordings that are maybe older, you know, not recorded all that great, right? The Zoom Method doesn't care. You feed it a good recording, it's going to reward you with that nice, beautiful audiophile experience that gives you goosebumps, gives you the, you know, the tingles and a little bit of the shivers, right? The chills, sorry, I meant to say the chills, not the shivers. But you know, you feed it a low quality recording and that's okay too. It does not rip it apart by any means. I never had to skip a single track. Whether you like to listen very low or very loud, the Zoo method has an incredibly wide sweet spot. It's without a doubt a low volume champion, and it can be cranked to 11 and doesn't fall apart. It absolutely holds on to its composure deep into the loudness territory and still manages to sound very unrestrained, open and effortless at low volume. So amplification, no problem. Recording, you know, quality, no problem. Room setup, no problem. It's a speaker that's really not fussy at all. So let's do those comparisons. First, let's compare it to Zoo's own DWX. I think a lot of you guys might want to know. Maybe you saw that review. You loved everything I had to say. Maybe the size was a little bit too big. You're wondering how close this little guy gets you. So the high frequency region of the Zoo DWX is going to be a little bit more forward. It's going to be a little bit more energetic. It's not a bright speaker by any means, but the method is a little bit more neutral overall. The Zoo DWX is going to give you a little bit more detail and detail retrieval compared to the method. The method is going to sound a little bit more relaxed by direct comparison. They're both going to have really good imaging. They're both going to stage really large. They're both going to have that really unrestrained and effortless mid-range that I know I keep saying it, but the soundstage, it cannot be understated here, guys. There's something, the Zoo is onto something using these larger drivers. They just bring such a big sense of scale to the table that is so effortless and natural sounding. The biggest difference in the mid-range region between the two speakers is this though. The Zoo DWX mid-range is mostly neutral. It's neutral and natural sounding. The Zoo method is slightly warm and natural sounding. So tonally, they're just a little bit different there, right? Moving down to the bass region, both speakers have bass that is more agile, quick, tactile, good note-to-note distinction, more about speed and articulation and impact. Neither speaker is like a bass monster with that super thick, full, pumped up bass that some speakers have, like the CSS Crichton, Buchard S400, KEF R3 Meta, so on and so forth. Both speakers are more about agility. But of course, the larger Zoo DWX is going to have a little bit more of a fuller sound overall. Both speakers have respectable bass reach and extension. The bass simply is not super pumped up. I'd imagine with either speaker, most people, especially those who like bass like myself, are going to want to use a pair of high quality subwoofers. Figure a pair of REL T5Xs or T7Xs, hell, even REL's 1003 Mark II would be an awesome pairing. So that's that comparison out of the way. I think the method is a fantastic alternative for anyone who cannot accommodate the physical size of the DWX. For those that absolutely can accommodate the size of the DWX, by all means get the DWX. For those who can't, the method is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. While the larger DWX has a little bit more resolution, the method sounds so good. I didn't miss it. I never missed it. You know what I mean? I never was like, God, I wish there was more resolution. I knew it had less because I compared it to so many other speakers, but I never missed it. The whole time I was reviewing the method, this was kind of, from a reviewer, it was frustrating, but it's a great thing that happened. I'd come down here, I'd play some tracks, 2-3 hours would go by, and I forgot to listen critically. I just forgot. Because the speaker's so darn engaging. It's so enjoyable to listen to. I was having such a good time. I'm getting the chills and the goosebumps and the feels, and I'm doing the toe tapping, and there's a smile on my face as I'm listening to all my favorite songs. I'm just enjoying myself. I kept forgetting this was a review sample. I kept forgetting, hey, I have to make a video about this speaker, right? I just kept having fun with it. And in my opinion, that's what a fantastic hi-fi product is all about. It's so good, on the ears, or it's conveying music in such a way that you're not interested in whether it's technically doing this or that. You're not like, oh, the treble, is it like this? Is the mid-range? Like, you're just, that part of your brain just turns off, man. And there's just a smile on your face, and you're enjoying the experience. All right, let's do more comparisons. Let's compare the Zoom Method to the Dynaudio EMIT-20. That's another speaker I really, really liked. That's another speaker that, you know, the Zoom Method and the Dynaudio EMIT-20, those are both major runner-ups for product of the year for me. The Dynaudio EMIT-20 is $1,050. The Method's $1,200 a pair. So they're roughly in the same price category. I love both of them, but for very different reasons, because these two speakers could not be more different, guys. Starting in the high frequency region, the Dynaudio EMIT-20 is going to have more sparkle. It's going to be a little bit more energetic. Its attack is a little bit soft, so it's still very easy on the ears. But in terms of treble quantity, there is a lot more of it compared to the Method that is more neutral. Of course, the Dynaudio EMIT-20, you know, having that more treble, and that, you know, that Dynaudio tweeter that is pretty darn good is going to give us a little bit more detail and detail retrieval compared to the Method being more relaxed, more linear. Moving down to the mid-range, these speakers really start to depart. It's just this simple. The Dynaudio EMIT-20 is a speaker that is bass boosted. Its mid-range is going to be thick, it's going to be full, it's going to sound great. But the Zoom Method is just going to be much more unrestrained, much more effortless, stage much larger. And the EMIT-20 doesn't stage small. The Dynaudio EMIT-20 stages just as large as any $2,500 speaker. The Zoom Method just stages ridiculously large. So it's the sound in the mid-range, they're both slightly warm. The Zoo is just more like agile, quick, responsive, natural, massive in terms of scale. The Dynaudio EMIT-20 is more like thick, full-bodied, heavy-handed, right? Because it's got a lot of bass. Moving down to the bass region, again, the two speakers are very different. The Zoom Method bass is more quick, agile, articulate, great note-to-note distinction. It's all about speed and dynamics. The Dynaudio EMIT-20 bass is quite a bit slower by direct comparison, but there's a lot more of it, right? The Dynaudio bass is just very full-bodied. It's, you know, they're pumping that bass up. It's not what you would consider neutral, right? But I digress. So, like, it's pretty simple. You want the speaker that's going to have the fuller, thicker sound overall, including in the mid-range, and a little extra sparkle in the treble region. That's the Dynaudio EMIT-20. You want a speaker that is more about just being agile overall from the treble down to the bass. A mid-range that is the star of the show, wherein punches 2-3 times, you know, its price in terms of its sound quality, right? That's going to be the Zoom Method, right? Its stage is larger, more effortless, more unrestrained in the mid-range, so on and so forth. So let's compare it to the SVS Ultra Evolution bookshelf. One more thing about the EMIT-20 and the Zoom Method. The EMIT-20, great speaker. I love it. Not a low volume champion. Zoom Method is. A lot of you guys asked me about low volume playback, so I just wanted to mention that. The Dynaudio EMIT-20 likes to play a little bit louder, right? It's a little bit lower on sensitivity. Same could be said about the SVS Ultra Evolution bookshelf I'm about to compare the Zoom Method to. Also, lower sensitivity, likes to be played a little bit louder. Not quite the low volume champion the Zoom Method is. SVS Ultra Evolution bookshelf, a little bit more sparkle in the treble region, a little bit more on the forward side compared to the Zoom Method. Its treble attack is ever so slightly on the sharper side of things. Again, with the Zoom Method, more relaxed, more neutral sounding. Moving down to the mid-range, the SVS Ultra Evolution bookshelf speakers mid-range is a neutral affair. It is as neutral can be, and I love it for that. The Zoom Method, air slightly warm, a little bit more tonally rich. It's going to stage tremendously larger, more air, more expansiveness, more unrestrained, effortless, all those things, right? I know I keep using those words. I'm doing it on purpose. I'm really trying to drive home the point of how unrestrained and effortless that mid-range is, because that's what makes the speaker a giant killer, in my opinion. Moving down to the bass region, the SVS Ultra Evolution bookshelf is nowhere near as bass boosted as the Dynaudio EMIT-20 I just compared the Method to, but it still does have a little bit more bass than the Zoom Method. Though the Zoom Method still has the quicker, agile, and more tactile bass. So far in all of these comparisons, the Zoom Method can get closer to the wall than either of those two speakers. So if that is a concern, if you listen at lower volumes but still want a speaker that can, you know, get really loud and get pretty close to the main wall, that's the Zoom Method, right? The only speaker I've compared it to so far that can also get really close to the main wall is the uDWX. The last speaker I'll compare it to, let's see here. How about that Galleon transmission line Voyager? That's also $1,200, by the way. Sorry, the SVS Ultra Evolution bookshelf is also $1,200. The Zoom Method's $1,200. Let's do that. The Galleon transmission line Voyager uses a 5¼ inch driver. It's the smallest out of all the speakers I've done the comparison to, but we're going to start in the opposite direction here. Insane amount of bass coming out of that transmission line Voyager. Oh my goodness, being a 5¼ inch driver, it doesn't even make sense. Those of you that have never heard a transmission line speaker, it's insane the amount of bass they bring to the table. But it's not a speaker you're going to get all the way against the main wall whatsoever. That speaker ships with 2 different kinds of port plugs, and you're going to need to use them in most rooms. But I digress. Look, the bass of the transmission line Voyager, there is a crazy amount of it. Out of all the speakers I've mentioned so far, it has the most bass, despite having the smallest driver. The Zoo DWX, I almost said DWX. The Zoo Method, again, as I keep saying, the quicker, more agile bass, more tactile. It's more about impact, whether it be drums, guitars, things like that. So the 2 very different bass. Moving up to the mid-range region, this difference continues. The mid-range of the Galleon transmission line and the Zoo DWX are similar in terms of how natural they sound. They both do a really good job with the human voice, instruments. The tonality is really good on both of them, but just about everything else is really different. The Galleon transmission line Voyager has a much thicker mid-range. The Zoo Method has a mid-range that is much more unrestrained and effortless, much more agile overall. And the difference there is primarily it's because that transmission line Voyager has so much bass, you know, that it carries up to the mid-range and makes it sound super full and thick, right? Whereas the Method, more about agility, quickness, speed, transients, right? Dynamics, things like that. Moving up to the treble region, wildly different. The transmission line Voyager is one of the darkest speakers I've ever heard in my life. It is for people that don't like treble at all. You want a speaker that is not just a little rolled off. You want a speaker that's very rolled off. That's the transmission line Voyager. The Zoo Method is going to be, again, very neutral in terms of treble quantity. So it's this simple. If you want one of the darkest speakers in terms of treble with just a tremendous amount of bass, that's the transmission line Voyager. You want the more neutral treble with the more agile bass, with the mid-range that is very unrestrained and natural at any volume, low or loud, that's the Method. So look, I think that's everything I wanted to tell you guys. All right, I told you what it sounds like. I told you about those unique features. I told you what I think makes it a giant killer. We talked about amplifier pairing, room setup. That's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. If you got any questions, this YouTube channel does have a free Discord server. Link is in the description box of all my videos. You can also drop a comment in the YouTube comments section. Yep, that's everything, guys. Until next time, take care.